Okay, I'm sorry I stopped the recording, but I gave an example of how people sometimes put pressure on rabbis to do certain things, and the rabbi has to oftentimes stand up to very strong forces of resistance. So he says, "Gam ki yesh shava be'enav beinin kvar hotzi hadar mipiv lo hotzi asher adam ol l'shgia lefam." We're in the left column. Sometimes a person makes a mistake. Lo yeh lo shum negir ratzon is ametz lamadaito. There are certain people, they never make a mistake. No matter how much you prove to them that they're wrong and you argue with them, they're always right. No names. They think it's like Nidarm. Whatever you say, you should do. And they will, no matter what. A Rav who's passing, he should not be embarrassed to say that he made a mistake. We find many times in Gemara where the Chachamim were not embarrassed to reverse themselves. They would darshan in public and say, I made a mistake. V'chol amar Adoni Mari, that's al migon agadol mi Moreno Rabbeinu Hagon HaChassid Rav Tzvi Herish Brody, who was the Rosh Bezin in Salat. L'fam ha'yaposik shegel b'hilchus treifus al tarnigos, and he would paskin on a chicken. V'ashol shav leveso im sheila, and the person would go home with the chicken. Im achakach hayanir li ace a pickbook b'haraso, should be probably near low. If after he would be uncertain about his psak, hayimitzaba l'havi l'fanav ha'sheila b'chazar l'ayim bo, he would say, bring back the chicken so that I could look it over. Achim below yiras Hashem v'shlemis hamidus yuchol lios nechaz b'svach kama kulkul michshom. But without midos, a person can be trapped in many pitfalls. It's easy for a person to be swayed. I just said by Davim that the Zohar says that the Meraglim, even though it says Rashi says Kul Manashin, they were all tzaddikim when they left, but nonetheless, so how could they have come back with such a negative report? And Rebbeinu Shalom said it's a good place. How do they? I mean, it's like unbelievable that they made a rebellion against the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the Moshe Chaim Butzato in the Mesilas Yesharim says that they were worried about their position of power because they were the Nisim, and they thought that when they entered Eretz Yisrael, they won't be Nisim. So they were willing to sacrifice all the Jewish people. There, they had an opportunity to have a homeland in Eretz Yisrael, and they were willing to sacrifice that because of their own personal status. And the more I watch politicians do the same thing, the more I use them as Mishal. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's with the border and the fentanyl that's coming in. I can't understand they have so much blood on their hands, and it's so that why do they have an open border? Because they can get more votes. It seemed. I don't want to take a political stand here. Maybe we should turn off the microphone again. But that's, at least ostensibly, it's against the law to let people in. They didn't open the border in Canada. They didn't open the border anyplace else. How come Pitom they're opening the border? So they have the Gias, but the Gias is one thing. But if you have thousands and thousands of there's child abuse and sexual abuse and all, and the drug abuse. When there was the vote for the Obama's brilliant Iran deal, so almost all the Democrats voted in favor of it, and all the Republicans voted against it. So nobody could think on their own. I think it was all party based. So, but what about what's good for the world? And we met with one of our local members of the House. And we spoke to him. It was a whole group of 50, maybe some of you were there. We spent about 2 hours with the guy. And he said, yeah, it's true. It might be a bad idea. We said it could be terrible. This is a regime that's a sponsor of terror, and you're going to give them billions of dollars. And yeah, I hear what you're saying. But in the end, he voted in favor of it. So a Rav also has to be concern because the Rav has also his own rabbi doesn't want to be fired and he doesn't want to be unpopular, and so could be tremendous pressure. There's was this a few times I think Rav Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik was giving a shir and somebody asked the kasha or he thought of a kasha in the middle of the shir. He says it's no good. He goes to the Gemara and he said that's the end of the shir.
I think on one of the I think in his proba he gave like a tremendous 2-hour pill pull and then at the end he said I was wrong and he closed the Gemara.
He closed the Gemara. Yeah. I mean, I know people. Talmidei Chachamim. You can never convince them that what they paskin is not correct, or what their position in it is. So he says, "V'chol zehu avan gadol" on page 6. It's a terrible crime. Ki hini atara kuhu shal kadosh baruch hu v'chol ha'amar sheyamal adam lifsok eized din mishvat al havin hasu beis halacha. All the effort the person puts into understand to paskin who rak leidol haskell hasik ratzon Hashem yisparach shemo b'darkei Torah. You're paskin God's Torah. Ki kol Torah chachmasu b'tzon yisparach shemo. Ulam memesin legia toch also sholel. If a person will be misled by a bias, v'yitzol hasos esichol hatos also chefson, and he'll sway his intellect in order to do what's best for him. Lifsok ezidin or farashes halacha al pi daita b'tzono. Even though he knows deep down that it's not true, he has fabricated or he's created. Boda means to fabricate a new Torah, a false Torah. For who heirus yisodei hadas and he's destroyed the foundations of the religion. Another thing is that he won't want to ask advice from anybody because I have to ask advice. I'm such an important person. And he makes spot judgments without thinking about it. I always I should turn this off also, but I'm saying a compliment. Barry Wolf is my doctor. Barry oftentimes says, I'm going to speak to, like if I have an issue, I had this problem with allergic reactions. So he right away said, I'm going to speak to an allergist. There are some doctors, they'll never speak to anybody, or at least they won't admit it because they think that it's a pagam in their stature position. But I need to ask somebody else's advice. I'm such a, but that's a sign of greatness.
That's one shot in Tov Shebarofim, like a guy who thinks that I'm the best.
If he thinks he's the Tov Shebarofim, Kol Shadavar Ki Gomalos Tatacha Shidiyas Sitar V'Hu Leid LaHalacha Bru LaHoros LaAtzvu LaChem Alzeh Muchli Sheyeh Yiras Hashem Altzar V'Lo Zeh Yuchol Lovo Lidei Kamak L'Kulam Michsham Rabim. If the person doesn't have Yiras Shemayim, then he won't be able to paskin correctly. V'hinei l'nyan mitzvahs limud haTorah l'kayim mitzvahs eser shel v'gisa hatachasu miyad. The mitzvah of v'gisa you mikayim right away. See b'chol shav v'rega shel lomed mikayim mitzvahs asay. As soon as every moment you go, you mikayim mitzvah. Ulam darkei limud yidiyas haTorah l'malos hamitzvah shel v'shinanti shev'diri terem l'chulam v'ficha v'hu l'shtalam b'chachmas haTorah. Part of Yishinantam is that you should know how to learn. You have to sharpen your understanding, and you have to align your understanding to. You have to think like a Ben Torah. And you have to have knowledge. You have to be able to think in a clear way. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes years for a person to develop the ability to fathom understand the depths of Torah and to think in a clear fashion. The effort to learn, to know how to learn, is for the future. It's like somebody who's putting wheat in a silo that it should be there for a long time. Until it becomes the market value goes up. It's not immediate. It's over the course of a long period of time. Now he says here a fascinating thing. Ki harbi dvarim shehutru l'shem mitzvah sheyidiyas Torah mashalohay inyan l'shem mitzvah limud Torah levad. There's many things that a person is allowed to do in order to make the mitzvah of Yidiyas Torah that are not necessarily a fulfillment of the mitzvah of limud Torah. Kamo yisod darchei apilpul l'chadudi. Harbe bittul zman masha yuchlios mikoach darchei Yidiyas Torah keniskul el. If a person is sharpening his mind, and it's what we call in yeshivas, the person learns ba'amkus or lamdis. You could spend a whole year discussing a shayla and learning and back and forth, and especially younger bachim, a lot of the things that they say is totally off base. It could be total nonsense. But it's so really it should be bittul Torah. Why are they wasting their time saying their own? They come up with their own chidushi Torah that have absolutely no basis and no foundation. But that's the only way they're going to learn how to learn. It's like a child, in order to learn how to walk, he has to take steps. So he says, he calls it bittul zman. All this time that he's struggling with pilpul, he calls it bittul zman. But at least if it leads to Yidiyas Torah, so it's worth it. We'll be mekayim mitzvahs. But let's say a person spends, he loves to say Chedushei Torah, and he loves to be a falpol, but his midas are no good. And let's say he's a Baal Gaiva, and he says things that are off. Because he thinks that look, I can say a whole chaburim. People are going to say, "Wow, you're so smart," but in the meantime, he's misrepresenting. So even though he the chazal higir tachsanitza, he chachmasu tuyaslo lefuka michshol beniskula. Then his intellect is going to be a stumbling block. It's not worth it. All the time that he spent being mefalpo is a waste of time. He thinks he's an okar harim. He's uprooting the mountains, but in the meantime he's just making a big mess. It would be better that he should just learn to mekayim begisa. So he says, now he's answering the original question. When the Gemara says that when a person comes in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu for judgment, did you set aside time to learn? And were you mefalpo and chachma, and did you understand one thing from another? No, that's called bina. The Gemara says that if you have your shemaim, it's good, but if not, it's better that you didn't learn. So he says, "I'm the law. Keep the bezel. That's a mitzvah limud Torah. Mitzvah asay. So his big kasha was, what do you mean? If you don't have your shemaim, you shouldn't learn. So he says, no. To mekayim the mitzvah of limud Torah, of course you should learn. Ki ein lo yachas yichos im yiras Hashem, k'moshe ein l'shar mitzvahs im yiras Hashem yisparach. It's like all other mitzvahs. You can shake the lulav even if you're not a yiras shemayim. When the Gemara says that you have to have yiras shemayim, it's connected to what it says that the person is going to be asked when he comes before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rebbe Hashem is going to say, "Were you mefalpo b'chachma?" Zemar yiras Hashem otzara ein ilo kim ein yiras Hashem otzara lo higil l'tachas ki chachmasu hu lo od l'michshol avon im kem mutar shel pilpo klal k'israel. It's going to end up that the person is distorting Torah. That's what he said before. That he's boda Torah chadasha. He's distorting Torah, and therefore it would be better that he wouldn't have to waste. It's bittul zman and bittul Torah, and he. So this is when you want people that a salesman tries to figure out an angle. How do you convince somebody to do something? So here, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, this is based on what he learned from his Rebbe, from Yisrael Salanter. The Yisrael Salanter promoted the learning of Musars. So this is what I mentioned in my email, that people think of Musar as a standalone. That it's if you don't learn Musar, so you're going to have bad midos and you'll hurt people's feelings, but it won't affect other things that you're doing. So it'll affect bein adam l'chavero. But the way that it's being presented by Ravitzel is that the person's whole Torah learning is going to be a distortion and a perversion. If a person does not have proper mitos, then his learning is not a kiyum of Vishinantu V'necha. He says this in a much, or not he doesn't say, but Rav Simcha Zissel Ziv, who is, and this has to do with learning Svarim written by people who did not have Yer Shemayim.
Oh, there we go.
So, I mean, you could infer it already from what he said, that if a person doesn't have Yer Shemayim, so there's a lack of integrity, and he's Boda Torah Chadosha. He's creating a new Torah. So, but here he has on page 8. This is Rav Simcha Zissel, was another one of he was the Alter of Kelm, and he was a Talmud of one of the three Talmud, the main Talmud of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. So he says the third one was there was Rav Simcha Zissel and Ravitzel, and the third one, which I mentioned last week, I can't remember names anymore. Somebody here reminded me. The third one was okay. It'll come to me in a minute. So he says like this. He says on page 8, where I have the arrow. I want to reveal something that's been a secret by me for 20 years, or maybe close to 30 years. Biyosi Bizagar, I don't know where that is, someplace in Lit, I guess. Hayisham Az Adoni Mari Rabbi, that's where Yisrael Salanter. Hayisham Rosh Hashanah. V'asasham minyan b'fnei Yisrael. Yisrael had his own minyan for Hashanah. V'shamati mena davar marsha amar li la'atzmi v'lo shama shum adam. Nobody else heard it. And I was astounded. I never heard such a thing. I never saw anything like this written in the Sefer. And because I realized that most people would not be moved by it the way I was, I didn't tell it to anybody. Until I find the right person to hear what I have to say. I once tried to tell this over to somebody who was an Adam Gadol, but he wasn't part of the movement of Yisrael Salanter, the Musar movement. I saw he didn't understand what I was talking about. And if you don't understand it, it will have absolutely no impression on the person. So now let's skip to the next paragraph. He says that his Rebbe Rishon asked him if he had Gilui Elio. I understood this because I learned a lot of Musar. And I was working on Amunah. That it should be like a living Amunah. That I speak about always. That a person has to take his childish amunah and put it on the horns of a deer and let it run away. When you're young and you run like a tzvi, like a deer. You have to start fresh. As if you were just born. It's like a new world. Okay, so he says that Rabbi Yisrael. Okay, skip a few lines, about 6 lines later. When he basi shama b'klaso l'nsol zakbar v'esam hamusar chaziko ki ha'yichoshes l'choshes pen etes atzmi actually got gedulos. Rishon Salanter was worried that he was being so frum that he maybe thinks that he's bigger than he is. So this he wanted to burst his bubble. So he said to him, "Hey, did you see Elio today?" Can't even ask me dvar. But then he says, and this is and then that's when he told me something that I never heard from before. He has a long introduction to this. He's building it up. Okay, so let's see. Let's get the next paragraph. So here's what he heard. Amar. This is what Rabbi Yisrael Salanta said. Achri ki yadu shetara eino psuka min hashemayim. V'raknim serzul chachmei ador. Dayari arts b'kiyas moadim. The halacha is Torah B'Shemaimi, and the Chachamim, they have the authority over establishing when it's Rosh Chodesh, and what follows from that is when it's going to be Yontif, and that affects the Chayve Krisis and Mises Bezdin. Hakol, because if it's Yontif, then you can be Chayv Misa. Hakol kasher nir lebezdin shalmata, and everything is determined according to what Bezdin Shemal Paskins. And what people paskin, it's a tremendous koyach that God gave us over the ability to paskin shaylos, and that becomes Torah. The responsibility is so great that a dayan has to have a perfected midos. For us lo yeh meshucha, then he won't be bribed, he won't be biased. Ki yesh. Then you could say that a dayan should pass it according to the way he sees it. Because then he has eyes. If he didn't learn properly, then he shouldn't be a dayan. And af impam echa mechaven el ms. And this should be underlined. I should have underlined it. Ain't tarasa tar klal. Even if he says something that's ms, it's not Torah. If a person who says it is not about midos, or even the worst is if it is hashkafas or off, he says that's not Torah. Ki Torah ain't psuka mishayim. Torah is not. We're not. It's an amazing thing. This idea of Torah l'Shemayim. If Moshe Rabbeinu would have Tchias Mesim now, he would see a lot of things that we're doing that he would object to, and he would say, Why are you doing that? He says, because that's how they paskin. That's how the Beis Yosef paskin or Ramah. He says, but I was in Har Sinai. That's not what God said. God said to do it this way. God said the brachas on tefillin. It's a machlokes with two brachas. God said to make one bracha. Why are you making two brachas? So the responsibility doesn't make any difference to us, because Torah L'Shemayim. We're not. It's not Torah because we're revealing what God told Moshe, because we don't know what God told Moshe. It's Torah because if a person is a Talmid Chacham and he's Erlich and he has Yiras Shemayim, so then you say Torah Shemayim. That's the famous Gemara with the Machlokas for Yeshua and the Chamim about what was it about what? About Tanner, right? And he said the Kosi Beis Shemesh Chicho, and they said doesn't matter. Torah Lav Shemayim. So even you see the God felt one way, it didn't matter. That wasn't Torah. So in order that a person creates Torah, so he says if a person doesn't have proper midos, then the Torah that he espouses is not Torah. He says, the Gemara says in Chagiga that if your Rebbe is like a Malach, you should learn from him, and if not, don't learn by him. Why? Pirish ki taraso eino Torah, because even if he says something that makes sense and happens to be true, but his Torah is not Torah. The Gemara has an expression that somebody's a liar even if he says the truth and nobody listens to him. Pirish ki emes shalo eino emes, ki taraso eino Torah. Barachman Yerachim Aleinu Shiagano Chel B'Taraso Yisbarach. Hainu.
It's like Tchias Mesim.
Harvey, we quoted you.
Twice we quoted you.
Hainu Shenavin Atzmeinu B'Hamidas and Tzorach Sakin Tarvastar Senator V'Yesh Lochem. So it's a very powerful thing that he says. I heard this from my Rebbe when I was 15, Mendel Campen. He told me that Rabbi Yisrael says that if somebody's midos are off, then his Torah is not Torah. He could say a brilliant shir, and he could say a terrific drasha, and he could pass in all sorts of shilos. But if it's not Torah, if the person is not refined, then his Torah is not Torah. If just to add one more point to this, if you look on page 11, Rabbi Sternbach says, Rabbi Moshe Sternbach, in Mutta, where I have the arrow, in Mutta Likro, B'chidush Torah Ne'imim B'Tam Chacham Baldeas Kozvos. I in my email 2 weeks ago, I said I got a sefer in the mail from somebody who I know, who was involved in things that you're not supposed to be doing. So I was curious to see what he has on it's a part of Sefer HaChumash, so maybe it'll help me make drushes. But is it a good idea to look at it, or is it a bad idea? So he says, "B'nimuki ridvaz parshas Truma meyid b'shem pekodesh Rav Chaim Evloshin shin yesh bo minos I efsher she yiskel chavim amita shotara afil binyan echad." If a person has hashkafas that are wrong, he'll never be mechavim to the emes of Torah. He could be brilliant, and he could be a big darshan and a big mechadish. Our eino zocha l'chavim amita shotara shelozet sarach siyata d'shmayim yechedes umin kamosel yiskala. This is a little different than what Rav Itzel says, that Moshe Sternbach saying you won't have siyata d'shmaya. There is an absolute emes, but you're missing it. But Rav Yisrael Salata says even more. He says even if you mechamin to the emes, your Torah is not Torah, because you're not a ben Torah, so your Torah you're like a monkey that says a chiddush. That's not Torah. Ufiza asi shaper mashadar shemayom haskama. And that's the reason why people make sure to have a haskamas on their svarim. Achsam sofer hechmer mod b'zeh. V'afshe hamaskim lo karakol sefer shichol alalov. The person giving haskama doesn't have to read it from beginning to end. Mikoma haskamasu hu al mechaber shu yarishmaim. It's not haskama on the sefer as much as on the individual. Ve'imbo reach minus. Below mechapes kulos bli yisod or buses. And he doesn't find kulas without any foundation. It's to show that the purpose of Haskama is testimony on the individual, that he's somebody that's worthy to paskin. Now he says even a bigger chiddush. The ikar yisayid gadol hu the kasher lomdim taraso gadol b'Torah miskashem el nafshel. When you learn Torah from a gadol, the Torah forges a connection to the soul of the Talmid Chacham. And that's why even after a person dies, if you say over a memra from somebody who passed away, it's as if his lips are talking in the kever. And say even when he's alive, it's koshkem when he's alive. It's a bracha for the nifta that you should learn his Torah. Torah kal das. But if you're learning Torah from somebody who is lightheaded, meaning that he's not serious, miskasha elav, you become connected to him. Upogim ma'od b'nefesh shalomed. Your soul becomes tainted. And that's the reason why the Gemara says that if your Rebbe is like a Malach, then you should study Torah. Ulefi kedushas hasefer shalom bo amalamed kachzocha halomed l'or ha'aron nishmasel k'mevur b'perish l'chasi yavitz. Chavetz Yavetz says the same thing, that when you learn the sefer of a gadol, so then it is a light of a spiritual light that fills the person's soul. Some people use Torah as a way of getting ahead. They could have doubts in Amunah. They should stay away from their Torah. V'davar zeh ikar b'yisayid gadol shemarav damel malach Hashem shekavanasa b'Torah so l'avad Hashem tevakish Torah mifiu abo mechapis rak lasos mitocha matamim. But if the person is just playing with Torah, kosh ken kishen de isum chuz, or if the person has false hashkafas al tavakshu mipiv shebezeh atah shoev mi meima v'davik bo. you're going to end up cleaving to somebody whose Torah is not is bad. But Grach mi bris, Rav Chaim Brisker lo niach gudish bris gudarshan bam yedios mifak pakos. He had questionable hashkafas. V'shol also halo derish rak l'ilmod Torah l'daktim mitzvos l'shalach habanim talmud Torah. Well, what's wrong? His message is all true. Ve'eshish ta'afsha habasar kosher mikomakom al-kli hu treifa v'asu l'shmamel. If you have kosher meat, but you cook in a treifa pot, so the meat becomes treif. V'huadin sefer m'chidushim yafim sham v'chaber ein daitam l'chuvanos lo kedai l'mod bam. So, I mean, this is the most extreme from that. He's saying that it taints. There's a spiritual connection. Your soul is tainted, but the Yisrael Salanta says it very strongly that it's not Torah. Even if he's mechavan to the MS, first he won't have siyata d'shmaya to mechavan to the MS, and secondly, even if he is mechavan to the MS, his Torah is not Torah. So I have a tremendous kasha on this chiddush of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and that is the Gemara in Chagiga. Did I put it into the booklet? I think so, yeah. On page 10. The Gemara says that Rami Meir was the Talmud of Acher. Acher was riding on a donkey, on a kippur, and he went chutz l'tchum. He became an apikaris. So the Gemara says, Rami Meir, Hechel Gamar Tara Mipume, the Acher. How could Rami Meir study from Acher? Acher was Elisha ben Avua. V'amar Ram, page 10. V'amar Rabbabar, over here. Amar, the Rabbabar, Rav Chanan, Amar Rav Yochanan, my dechsiv, ki sifsei kan yish medas, v'sar me v'akash v'fio, ki ma'ach Hashem tzvakaso, im dalma Rabba ma'ach Hashem tzvakos, v'akash tar mi'pio. If Rebbe like a malach, you should learn from him. V'lav ali v'akash tar mi'pio. So how could Rebbe learn from Acher? He wasn't like a malach. So the Gemara says, Amar Reish Lakish, Remeir Kra Ashkech V'darish. Remeir found another pasuk, and based on that other pasuk, he had a raya from the pasuk that you got to study from somebody who's an apikaris. So the Gemara, I just skip a few lines. The Gemara says, Kasher Kra Yadadi. So, but it's a stira then. The pasuk of Tisifsei Kan Yishmer Da Asivak says that you're Ki Malach Hashem Tzvakos, that you should only learn from a malach. And then there's these other psukim that Remeir found that seem to like learn from somebody who has his ashkafas are completely off. So Mar says, "Lo kasha, ha begadol, ha bekatan." The difference is a gadol and a cotton. So Rashi says a gadol on the left side on the top. Rashi says hayadeli zar shelo yilmo ma'asav yochelu matar mipiv. The difference between a gadol can learn from an apikaris because you won't be influenced them. You'll be careful. But somebody's not a gadol, you might be influenced. So my kasha is, according to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, it's not only that you'll be influenced. According to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, if somebody is an apikaris, his Torah is not Torah. The whole thing is not Torah. It's not Torah. It's not. It's a perversion of Torah. It doesn't have the kedusha of Torah, and it's corrupting. So what's the teretz then? Well, so how did Remeir learn from Acher? Even if he had a pasuk, and even if he was a gadol, but there was no concern that he would be influenced by Acher, but still, the Gemara goes on. The Gemara says that Remeir was like if you have a fruit with a peel, you take off the peel and you eat the fruit, or you throw away the pit. Okay, but that's very nice if it's Torah. So then you can say that you throw away the parts that are no good. But according to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, if a person who's a kaifer, or even if he's not a kaifer, even if his midos are off, he's a balgaiva and he's influenced by different considerations other than to be able to find the MS. So then, why are you allowed to learn from such a person? His Torah is not Torah.
Don't we quote from Elisha ben Avuyah and Pirkei Avos?
Yeah, we do, but they say that was before he became.
So as long as you're not because at that
Elisha
point,
ben
that
Avuyah
Torah
said, "Al
is okay.
tistako b'kankan el mashiesh
Okay,
b'hem."
so that
At
Torah
that
is
point,
okay.
right? If somebody becomes an apikaris,
Okay.
that's what they say. They say that if somebody's an apikaris, the svarim that he wrote before he became an apikaris, you could use, but the svarim that he wrote
So what
after.
about somebody writes a sefer, you find a lady has problems with his behavior? Do we first figure out when he went bad.
according to this, you would have to find out. I think that's what Rabbi Schechter said. He said that whatever he wrote beforehand is okay, but what he wrote afterwards. But I'm asking on Rabbi Yisrael Salanter specifically. It doesn't. I mean, halacha we don't pass like the Gemara says that Rabbi Meir had his own pasuk. In the end, it comes out we don't pass like Rabbi Meir. So we don't hold. Rabbi Meir held that you could throw away the peel and eat the part that's. But what did Rabbi Meir hold? According to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, it's not Torah. I think it's this kasha bothered me many years.
Maybe Rabbi Meir is it's not Torah in the hands of Elisha ben Avuya, but Rabbi Meir takes it and when he understands it and he fits it into the context of his own learning, then he's making it into Torah.
He pulls out the part that's a real fruit and leaves out the other stuff.
No, he's saying, yeah, not only that. He's saying he's saying that by definition, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter saying is if an apikaris says a chiddush, it's not Torah. Even if it makes sense and even if it's a good vort and everything, it's not Torah because he said it, so it's not Torah. Okay, but that's only if it's connected to him. So let's say you hear what he had to say, and you think about it on your own, and you decide that it makes sense, and now you're transforming it to Torah. That's as far.
Was Acher trying to teach him Rabbi Kursis, or was he telling him?
No, he didn't.
Follow me. Like, when he got to the Chum Shabbos, didn't he tell him?
He told me she Chazar Bach. He should go back.
He went off, but you don't want to remember.
Go back so you won't be Machal Shabbos.
Right.
He didn't teach him, but the question is, Yisrael Salanter says even if you're mechaven to the MS, it's not Torah. That's my question.
He didn't say MS is not.
What?
I don't think he said MS.
He does. He
MS
said
is Rav Sternbach said MS.
no. I think Yisrael Salanter said
Get the MS.
in the Simcha Zissel says that even Imlo Afin Pamecha Mechavin El MS on the bottom of page 9 on the first column. If somebody doesn't have his midas or off, even if he's Mechavin to the MS, ain't Torah so Torah klal. His Torah is not Torah because if Torah would be B'Shemayim, so then you're trying to figure out what God's
What
thinking.
does that even mean? If there's, I have two problems. I say MS, you're going to have two big brains saying the opposite things, and they're both MS, or they're both different.
If you heard it, yeah, you're asking. It comes out if you heard it from the same chiddush. First, you heard it from an apikaris. He says a chiddush. It's not Torah. Then you heard it from your Rebbe. It is Torah.
Torah.
So, but it seems that whether or not it's Torah has to do with where you're hearing it from.
I think it has to be. I mean, I've often been bothered by this, and now it makes sense. But let's say Musar Shmuz is about midos, right? You hear it from a Talmud Chacham, and you assume that it's Limud Torah. But what if you hear it from, I don't know, some person on a talk show on CNN or something like that, talking about how you have to be a good person? So is that also Limud Torah?
Or I'll ask you, okay, but I'll extend your question. Let's say you go to Shalosh Shudas, we make a big push to have everybody speak, especially young people. They should speak by Shalosh, so they're not, they're not finished products yet. We have a lot of young B'nai Torah in the shul that are outstanding, but not everybody is. And the Gemara says you're showing over from a malach. How many malachim are there? Like, how many people could you say that whole statement is very difficult? What does it mean? You're showing over from a malach. Where are you going to find a rebbe that's like a malach? As great as our, everybody has flaws.
All the farmers during Shemitah are considered like malachim. Same version.
I spoke about this once on a Shabbos Jewish Rosh a few years ago. I said that the why did Rabbi Meir why did he want to be connected to Acher for? What?
He's been his Talmud.
Yeah, he was his Talmud, but he was
back.
because he wanted him to come back. But okay, maybe because he wanted to come back. So I thought that it means that even somebody like Acher at a deep level there was authenticity. And the Shamash is not to be Tahari. A person always has some, like they talk about the Pintel Yid. There's always some part of the person that's still pure. and so Reb Meir was able to, the Torah that emanated from the depths of his heart, that was pure, that Reb Meir was able to salvage. Okay, I don't know. I'm just showing you the issue here. I don't remember.
So it's much from this that an answer to the Shiloh about.
Yeah, the answer to Shiloh is you should not.
You should not be learning from
shouldn't
that
be
sefer
learning
from the-
Svarim, people who are Apikarsim, or, I mean, unfortunately, there are people who have been, their conduct is inappropriate in different things, abusive behavior and things. So you shouldn't be learning their Svarim. That's. I mean, there was this whole question about this rabbi. What was it? Wadler. Walder. Yeah, people were reading his books. The Gedolim said to throw them away. You shouldn't read them, even though there were maybe nice lessons but you shouldn't read them. The famous question: Why did the Talmidim Rekiva die? They weren't mechabed zed. So what aver is that in the Torah? Not being mechabed each other. Okay, so let's say it's v'ahavta re'acha kamocha, but you're not chayav misa for not practicing v'ahavta re'acha kamocha. So why did they die 24th? So what?
Chilul Hashem.
Chavetz Chaim says Chilul Hashem, but based on Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, you could say is because their Torah was not Torah. That's what he says. If Torah, if somebody doesn't have good midos, it's not Torah. Even if he's mechaven alamis, it's not Torah. So if it's not Torah, so here you had, these were the future leaders, the next generation. They were gonna teach a spurious Torah. It was not Torah. It was a perversion of Torah, and therefore it wasn't so much an onesh as it was that you can't have a Torah that they can't be the ones to transmit Torah to the next generation, because their Torah was not Torah. According to Yisrael Salanter, it's very powerful.
It's pogrom.
It's pogrom, yeah. It's not authentic Torah, and therefore they had to perish.
Rabbi, what about there are certain great Geonim from yesteryear, maybe today, who are unquestionably very, very learned and brilliant, and maybe very medactic in at least some many mitzvot, particularly binadam makom. But you hear many stories about them that they didn't treat people very nicely. So what about someone like that?
You're asking a very good question. I don't know. That essentially that's what Gemara says, that your Rebbe should be like Malach Hashem Tzvakos. So if they have bad, that's what it means. If they have bad midos, if they're abusive, if you have a Rebbe who's abusive, so he's not a Rebbe. He shouldn't be learning from him. I don't know. It's hard because the problem is there are no perfect people anymore. Maybe past generations. So if you see a flaw in your Rebbe, so I mean, like at what point do we say, maybe it's only if the person becomes a Rasha, if he's not a Rasha, even if he has a flaw. But the Gemara didn't say you have to be a tzaddik. The Gemara says you have to be like a malach. A malach is perfect, so it's a pella. What does that mean? I saw this farm talking about. What does it mean you have to be like a malach? Ein tzaddik ba'aretz she'aseh tov le'yachta. So how could you be like a malach? Ein tzaddik ba'aretz she'aseh tov le'yachta. Okay, anyway, bottom line is that I just the main thrust of Yisrael Salanter and Rav Itzel is to show is that midos is enormously important, not only in terms of bein adam l'chavero, but even in terms of your ability to study Torah and to understand Torah. If your midos are not in order, then the Torah that you study, it would be better that you wouldn't study, because bittul Torah, better to just read Ashri over 100 times than to study Torah in depth. Okay.
Shekoyach.